Okay.
Welcome back, everyone, to What Matters Gulf Coast. We have two exciting guests today. One will give us some history and take us back a bit, and the other will tell us about what's currently going on, some current events that we need to know about. Our first guest today is Eric Finley, a fourth generation native of Mobile, Alabama, descendant with family roots from 1850. He grew up in the African American business community with parental and maternal parents and relatives that were proprietors of health service businesses dating back to 1918. Currently, he is the tour director and history storyteller with Friends of the African American Heritage Trail, also known as the Dora Finley African American Heritage Trail, preserving and sharing African American history in Africatown and throughout Mobile. And this is an exciting venture. So if you have not availed yourself, please make sure you do. And I know sometimes we think because we live here, we know all about our history, our African American history. But I guarantee you, you will learn something new. He has been past president of Utopia Fellowship Foundation and the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association since 1936, with social and civic missions in the African American communities. Currently, he is a board of director member for both of these organizations. He is senior warden administrator for 10 years in the past with the Episcopal Church of the Good Shepherd. He's a volunteer on several community service projects: clean up the North Side Bottom area, Africatown Tours Development Committee, Davis Avenue Remembrance and Revitalization Committee, Mobile County Community Remembrance Project Marker Ceremony, and the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. He retired in 2015 with 25 years of service for an international telecommunications company. Of course, he didn't retire long because he is as busy as ever. And now let us hear from Mr. Eric Finley. Eric?
And Ms. Simpson, thank you so much for inviting me on What Matters on the Gulf Coast. It is indeed a pleasure to be here and to talk about the history of Mardi Gras. But let me say first, I need to say that I am married, and my wife, Vera Finley, and I have two children that are no longer on my 1040. So that's a blessing. But they have supported me in all of these endeavors for the last couple of years. So I'm most appreciative of that. But to get right down to the core of Mardi Gras, which we all love, it's a joyous time of the year. It's a time when you see people that normally walk with a cane. You don't see the cane because they're dancing, and the spirit just comes out in them. And Mardi Gras actually was the result of a Greek festival they used to have events celebrating the harvesting of crops. And this was, of course, many centuries ago. And then the French, the Spanish, and ultimately the Roman Catholic Church started celebrating Mardi Gras. And if you know that Mardi Gras actually starts 10 days after Christmas, and that's when we actually that was the time that the three wise men brought the gifts to the baby in the manger. And we start Mardi Gras every year with that liturgical event. And that's when we celebrate with the king cake. And most of us are aware of the king cake celebration, where we will have the little baby that we place in the bottom of the cake. And whoever gets that piece, of course, they have the opportunity to have the next party based off of their group. And then from that day up until Fat Tuesday, there are parades, there are Mardi Gras balls, there are debutante balls, there are luncheons, there's a host of events outside of the parades that we see in the public streets. So it's probably $1 billion industry right now, with the influx of people and the amount of revenue that comes in from the hotels and the X factor that we have throughout the community, to the point now that I'm too old to be young and too young to be old, but I just call it an adult spring break. But the Mardi Gras is in sync with the church's liturgical year, because as we all know, Mardi Gras in French is Fat Tuesday, and then we celebrate, we have repentance for 40 days until Easter Sunday, and then of course the season starts all over again 12 days after Christmas. And in Mobile, we say that we're the birthplace of Mardi Gras because it was first celebrated in Mobile by the French. And it was the Lemoyne brothers that founded Mobile in 1702. And they brought that celebration from France to Mobile. And they had the first parade in 1703. Well, most people forget that it was Pierre Lemoyne that founded New Orleans in 1718, 16 years after Mobile. And then he took that celebration to New Orleans. And so that's why we say that we're the birthplace of Mardi Gras. We're just kind of happy maybe some of those aloof people found out about New Orleans, and, we can have fun. But as far as African Americans, we've been a part of Mardi Gras since its inception. Initially, of course, it might have been the building of the floats or mules that moved the floats around throughout the city. There were seamstresses that were making all of the beautiful regalia. And I guess the first real participation of Blacks in Mardi Gras was in 1893, when a group of Black businessmen formed what was called the Orders of Doves Society. Now, there is an organization today utilizing that same name, but there's no legacy attachment to the OODs. Their first queen was a lady by the name of Miss Nicholas, and they celebrated Mardi Gras and they marched through the streets back in 1897. And that group actually disbanded in 1914. And Utopias, the original Utopia Club, was formed. And in 1938, the second phase of Utopia was started. It was Utopia Incorporated. And in 1940, the first court for Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association was selected. And the ladies and the queen were actually debutantes from the Utopia Ball. and the knights were the escorts from that ball. And so the first Mardi Gras in 1940 was held. The king was Mr. Alec Herman,
Yeah.
and the queen was Miss Eileen Howard.
Eileen Howard.
Um, and so we continue now. We're 84 years into Mardi Gras from that first celebration.
Mhm.
It's interesting that this is uh, the month for women celebration,
Mhm.
and I thought it might not be a bad idea if we talk about some of the women that have been complimentary to the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association, because we are an all male organization. Um, Initially started organized with 4 men. There was Mr. James Bastida. He was a local tailor. Mr. McInnes, he was a McKintis. He was a mortician.
Yeah.
And then there was Dr. W.L. Russell, a dentist, and Dr. James Franklin, who was a medical doctor. Those individuals initiated the organization along with about 40 other members at that time, and um, put together a very strong foundation. But their initial mission was to provide a, a formal way of young adults to participate in Mardi Gras. Because keep in mind, this was 1938. So we're just talking about 8 years after the Depression. And we're still in the Jim Crow days. And so obviously there was no participation in any of the white affairs. And these gentlemen wanted to provide a platform that these young African American collegiate students uh, could have fun and do it in a formal way. Um, Not ever was it thought that they would be a king or a queen or a knight or a lady, but the concept was that if they followed the processes of life, that they could become successful and they could achieve whatever goal they desired, uh, and that ultimately they were all kings and queens, and that's still the same way today. Um, when we select those courts. This past year, um, we actually have 2 courts now. We have a royal court and we have a junior court. The queen this year was Maya Rice, and she's a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy in West Point.
Mm.
The King Alexis I was Richard Edwards Jr., and he's a UAB business manager. We've recently resumed our junior court, and the junior queen this year was Mackenzie Crosby. She's a freshman at Alabama State University and with a major in forensic science. And the king was Nolan Lee III, who's a senior at Baker High. The junior queen is actually a freshman because we did not have a Mardi Gras last year. So we gave everyone the first right of refusal. The king last year was Connor Thurman, who, because of other commitments, could not serve currently. But again, if we go back to the inception, Mrs. Frederica Evans
Yeah.
was the Lady Auxiliary Chairperson in 1939 when that court was selected. And she was referred to as the mother of us all in a poem written by a gentleman by the name of Walter Knowles, the late Walter Knowles, I might say. And it was in a poem, but Miss Evans was the chairperson of the court up until the 60s. And she was actually a instructor at Bishop State Junior College,
Yeah.
which was the branch, known as the branch at that time.
Mm.
And she taught health and integrated arts and physical education, and received an award from President Franklin D. Roosevelt during that time. So just one of the ladies. And of course, the first queen, Miss Eileen Howard, just passed 2 years ago. She was
Yeah.
97 years old,
Mhm.
and she was a graduate of Alabama State University and attended Columbia University
Yes.
to get her master's and principal and vice principals at several of the local schools. Another female was Dr. Yvonne Kennedy, who was also, she was a junior queen, a royal queen, and a queen at Alabama State University.
Yeah.
And as we all know, she was president of Bishop State, president of the Deltas nationally, and she was an Alabama State representative.
Yeah.
So again, just a couple of females that have done international type uh, academic uh, positions that were a part of the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association that never probably thought that they would be on the platform that they ended up on. And so those are the type of individuals that are in the court today. And no, don't let me forget Alexis Herman, who was
Yes.
also a queen and
Mhm.
became Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton.
Yes.
And her father, Alec Herman, was the first king. So
Mhm.
just a little on Mardi Gras, and of course we could talk for the entire parade route on
Mhm.
on the participants that have been in the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association. I'm currently a historian. Our president is Tanera Rice. So I serve at his capacity as a historian. We tie this in kind of with the Dora Franklin Finley African American Heritage Trail, which was actually established in 2005. Interesting enough, it was Consul William Carroll
Mhm.
who was attending he was actually in Boston, from what I understand, as on a mission from the Chamber of Commerce, saw a sign that said Black Heritage Trail, thought it was interesting because he had heard his parents, grandparents talk about all the accomplishments that African Americans had made in Mobile, but it was always in the backyard or around the kitchen table, and thought it would be a good idea if we could have an African American Heritage Trail. And so he kind of initiated that thought, um, and Dora Franklin Finley um, accepted the opportunity to establish the trail and committed about 5 years of finding African Americans in places that had made significant contributions to the city of Mobile. And with the help of the city council and the mayor and several of the universities, the trail was established. And we have been offering tours here now for about 17 years. Um, we have about 44 locations throughout the city that we preserve and share history, and we're still unveiling history of African Americans that was not on the marquee.
Mhm. Very, very interesting history with both of those projects. Very, very interesting. Let me ask you a few questions, Mr. Finley. One of the things is, do we have any idea of, and I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but do we have any kind of estimate of how much money the African American community contributes to the whole Mardi Gras scene?
I don't have an exact number, but I can tell you that at one time the parade would only go down through the campground, Davis Avenue, and um, and then it was changed to just downtown. Um, and most Mobilians know that Davis Avenue was what we call our Black Main Street. It was
Yeah.
not a Black Wall Street, but
Uh-huh.
it was the street that you could come and shop and the majority of those businesses were owned by African Americans. Um, Ultimately, we continued the route down the avenue, but we had to include downtown because we have a lot of Mobilians now that come back and they're staying in the hotels. They're
Yeah.
at all of the hotels on Royal and Government Street. Uh, so we know that there's an enormous amount of money coming in from a hotel perspective. This past year, we had 37 floats in
Oh,
that parade, and
right.
in most cases, there's at least 20 people on those floats.
Yeah.
The
Oh.
average person is spending about $1,000 on throws,
Mhm.
not taking into consideration their costumes, um, all of the preparation that they make to ride on the float. A lot of these groups will have balls, which means that they're buying evening gowns and jewelry, they're getting their hair fixed. So the X factor is there. I think that there may be some studies that's been done by South Alabama and the Chamber, but I don't know if it's broken up into the different segments of the community. But we could probably put a percentage on that to get a pretty good estimate.
Yeah.
And it's significant. It is a surge, one that Miss our councilman might have the answers to.
Yeah. Yes. Very good. I think it would be very beneficial to have some sort of an idea because that could be an even bigger selling point. uh, you talked a little bit about the birthplace of Mardi Gras in Mobile. Can you review that again? Because sometimes people get a little confused between Mobile and New Orleans, and sometimes even the Mobilians get confused about it. So, could you kind of review that again?
Yeah, so it was King Louis XIV that contracted with two explorers, and they were the Lemoyne brothers out of Quebec, Canada. And he actually wanted them to find access to the Mississippi River because it goes all the way up to Wisconsin. And they initially ended up in Pensacola, which was occupied by the Spanish, and they had weapons, so they didn't want that war. And they headed west. And they took a little too sharp of a turn out in the Gulf of Mexico, and they entered into Mobile Bay and actually went 27 miles north of Mobile to Chestang, Alabama, where they settled for about 9 months. An outbreak of yellow fever and a flood came about and pushed them back to what we know as Fort Conde, which was occupied by the Marvilla Indians. And of course, they didn't have weapons. So they overtook that area. And the Lemoyne brothers established, the city at that time. And then Pierre Lemoyne founded New Orleans in 1718, 16 years after Mobile. And he brought the celebration from Mobile to New Orleans. And that's why we say we're the birthplace.
Yes.
I do know that they celebrated Mardi Gras on Fat Tuesday before us. We used to do it on New Year's Eve. And then ultimately we moved to Fat Tuesday. But we did celebrate here first because of Pierre Lemoyne and his brother, Jean Baptiste Bienville Lemoyne.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess New Orleans just did a better job of marketing it before we kind of got our feet in it.
I think we market well. We just have a different, a different maybe segment of the marketplace that we appeal to, and of course, New Orleans is much larger, um, and of course, Mobile has always presented itself as a family um, oriented city and parade. So we don't have a lot of the flashing and a lot of the
Yeah.
other things that might
Yeah.
take place in New Orleans. I'm not for sure if it does or not. I did live over there at one time, and it was pretty fluent throughout
Yeah.
the city. But
Yeah.
we've always been a family uh, uh, type Mardi Gras
Yeah.
that's enjoyable by everyone. In fact, there are sections on the parade route today that There's no smoking, there's no drinking, and they're just designated areas that people can watch the parade and not have to be intruded upon with those things.
Yes, that's true. I actually have relatives in Louisiana on my father's side, and
Hmm.
they actually come to Mobile for Mardi Gras. Um, because if you've done Mardi Gras in New Orleans at least once, that's usually enough, But they travel all the way here for Mardi Gras. I had a
Well,
house full.
I was much younger when I was there, and so I enjoyed it.
Yes, yes,
So it was fun. I mean, and of course now if I left Mobile, I would come back before sundown. So I'm happy with what we present, and I think and I think that's a consensus. We have a lot of people returning. I have people right now inquiring about next year.
yes,
Um, so we incorporate, when we do the Dora Franklin Finley African American Heritage Trail, my concentration is on African American history,
yes,
but we do add some trivia. We talk about Mardi Gras and other aspects of the city, especially when we have guests that are not from Mobile.
yes.
So it gives them that what I call gumbo flavor of the
Mhm.
diversity of our community. And we've had a diverse community since its inception back in 1702. I mean, we were comprised of, during that time we were colored. So we had free coloreds, we had Creoles, we
Yes,
had
yes,
uh, Cajuns, we had whites, I mean, Indians, indigenous people. So
yes.
we've been a very diverse city throughout the years.
This is just sort of a sharp turn, but I need to ask this question just to kind of get your viewpoint on it. Do you think there's any possibility of that route being changed and whether or not the Civic Center will have any impact on any of that? And I know it's probably a good question for Mr. Carroll as well, but I'll start off with you from the Mardi Gras perspective.
Well, our parade is called the Mammoth Parade because
Yeah.
it's a very large parade. We only parade one day a year, and that's on Tuesday. But
Mhm.
it leaves from our float den, which is on 305 Mamga Drive,
Yes.
which is on Mamga and Congress Street.
Yes.
So the the auditorium, the closing or the opening will not have an impact on anything that we do. Our route is totally independent of the Civic Center. We have an annual ball with 3,000 plus people, and we moved that ball to the Outlaw Convention Center about 10, 12 years ago. So
Okay.
we're locked in there.
Mhm.
And our luncheons that we have a royal luncheon every year, and that's the culture part of what we do.
Yes.
Those luncheons appeal to a different crowd. It's amazing that we never have a dress code for the royal luncheon, but all the ladies are in pastel colors, and
Yes.
they have these beautiful crowns on that they wear, and
Yes.
the guys are in suits, and usually we'll have a keynote speaker. And in the past, we've had Dr. Houdini from Alabama A&M. I remember we had Dr. George French from Miles College in Birmingham. I think he's at Clark now. We had Dr. Gavin. He was past president of Morehouse Medical School, as well as a past grand marshal here in Mobile.
Mhm.
Um, Dr. Leon Howard, he was a grand marshal. He was from Alabama State. We've had almost all of the HBCU schools presidents speak at that luncheon. This past year, we had Commissioner Masiria Ludgood,
Yes.
and she was introduced by the president of our council, CJ Small, who's a past Mamga King, and um, and the junior luncheon was Commissioner Corey Penn from District 1. And we've had past Mayor Samuel Jones also as a guest speaker,
Yeah.
keynote speaker at that luncheon. But we've brought in um, people that have delivered messages that will stay with us throughout the year for the attendees at those Raw luncheons.
Well, we want to thank you for taking this time. And I know we are a little behind schedule because Mardi Gras is over, but you and I have talked about the possibility of getting you on earlier next year because as soon as we get anywhere close to that Mardi Gras season, you are virtually tied up. So we're going to work really hard on getting in touch with you early on so you can give us some of the history and some insights as to what's coming up for the new Mardi Gras year, Mardi Gras season. Okay?
Look forward to it. I value the time that we spent today. I could have used another hour, and but come take the tour. You know, we can talk more on the tour. On the
Yeah,
tour, I'm about 2 hours and 15 minutes of nonstop talking about our great city of Mobile
great.
and how we can continue to make it better and give back. And so that's what we do. We preserve history, we share it with everyone, and at the end of that tour, we just hopefully realize that we're all human. We're all Homo sapiens. Okay,
Yes, that's true.
and going forward,
And
hopefully we can sit around the table.
one of the things we do want you to do is come back and talk to us about the tour a little more in depth the next go round. And yes, we will. Once you get everything worked out and what have you, we will start it up. I know they usually would leave from the VIA Center, the senior center, but that hasn't gotten started yet. I think it's in the making. Uh, but we do intend to take the
Yeah,
tour, and we want you to come back so you can delve into that with a little more depth to it. Okay?
we do, and we do depart from the History Museum of Mobile on 111 Royal Street every day by appointment.
Oh,
The
okay.
tours the tours are open. Uh,
Great, great.
so
Okay, good. Glad to know that. Okay. Every day at 11.
yeah, but you need to call for an appointment because a
Of
lot of
course.
times we're full.
Of
So
course. And the tour is
yeah.
usually about how long?
About 2 hours, but as you can see, I'm long-winded, so you got to give me another 15 minutes because I want to tell you kitchen stories. You know, I want to tell you about Constable Carroll, and I want to tell you about, other people that used to walk down the avenue and
Yeah, yeah,
teachers in all of the community schools and our
yeah,
baseball players in the Hall of Fame and all
yeah.
the principals that came from Mobile County Training School. See what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. I do. I see exactly. And we certainly do want to hear those stories, especially the ones about Councilman Carroll. Okay.
I'm gonna let him. He's gonna speak for himself.
Okay. Thank you
Thank you.
again,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Finley, and we will get you back on really, really soon. Okay.
Good day.
Good day. And now we will turn our direction turn ourselves into another direction, and we will talk about some current events. We do have Councilman Carroll, William Carroll, with us, and as you know, he is a regular. He comes on ever so often just to keep us abreast of what's going on from the city level. Sometimes he delves off into what's happening on the state level or on the national level. But whatever the information is, it's beneficial and we do need to hear it. So now I will turn the show over to Councilman William Carroll.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and I hope everybody can hear me. It's a pleasure again to be back on the show with Miss Violetta and everybody, and it's a pleasure to be part of Mobile and part of the Mobile process. As you can see today, I am traveling from a project that we have as a company over here at Keesler Air Force Base, and I've stopped so that I can kind of talk to everyone and just talk a little bit about what's going on in Mobile right now. So some of the things that you're going to hear come up now in Mobile is the biggie is right now the Civic Center, which will be back on the agenda Tuesday. And Tuesday, what's up for consideration is a contract with Populous for roughly $200,000. And that contract is so that Populous can go through what is called a conceptual programming phase to where they actually can tell us what we can and we can't do, or give us an idea of what we should and we shouldn't do. Now, whether or not that's going to have a monetary value to it, I don't know now, but it would probably tell us whether it's too expensive or it's within reach of what we're trying to do. My thinking is that Populous will come back like what we found during the Jones administration and say, hey, it's better to renovate this facility than it is to tear it down. If you remember during the Jones administration, we went through one of the same type of processes where at the end of the process, it was found that the Civic Center was basically costing the city of Mobile about $500,000 a year in deferred maintenance and utility costs and everything else that it's done. Now, that was 2010, so we're 10 years from there, 12 years from there. Now, what the other thing about the Civic Center is that the general public doesn't know is that the Civic Center has an operating loss every year somewhere of about $2.5 million. And that operating loss is normally taken care of with a transfer from the general fund from the city. And it is expunged that way. But that operating loss also causes what is called an asset depreciation every year to the asset which we have, which is the Civic Center. So imagine in 2010, if the asset was $10 million and we're 12 years away from that, then our asset is depreciated by that much every year since 2010, since we've been having that operating loss. So it's a non-revenue generating venue, but to renovate it and get to where we don't have an operating loss, and also to make it a revenue generating facility again would be better for the city as opposed to it being a financial drain. I used this comparison last time. We've got Ladd Stadium that's basically breaking even with the loss of the schools and everyone else. That's not really costing us that much money. But we've got a Civic Center that's costing us money every year, but yet we want to tear down Ladd Stadium and save the Civic Center. I hope that as time goes forward, we'll realize that we need both facilities and not just one. That's one of the bigger issues. In last week's meeting, the reapportionment study that was on a proposal for financing failed because of the lack of attendance in voting. We had 2 members that were out, so we couldn't get to 5. Also, the racial polarization study also failed, and it failed for the same reason. I have more hope for the racial polarization study passing in the next weeks, knowing the fact that it actually failed 3-2, and we only need 2 more votes, which I think we can get. The other, I think, is going to be harder to get there as we move forward. We've also had in the redistricting process another map that was introduced by Stand Up Mobile, the NAACP, the IMA, the ministers, and several other focus and coalition groups in the city that have drawn a map that actually works to what we can see right now, but the map has to be vetted. I've asked the administration for their map overlay, their boundaries, and all of the information that's needed so that I can overlay the submitted map to the city districts to make sure that they are actually plausible. If they are plausible, then it's my intent to submit them also along with the mayor's presentation for consideration for redistricting. So those are the 2 biggest things that we have going on right now. There's some other little small things about cameras and ARPA funding and Alabama Power leasing the cameras back to us for the gunshot detection systems. That hopefully may pass this coming week, and we can move forward with that. I had a few questions as to the process, though, there was some concern from me. I don't understand us giving Alabama Power the money for the cameras. So in my essence, we're paying for the cameras, but Alabama Power is turning around and leasing us back the cameras that we just paid for. I had to ask for some clarity there. I wasn't quite up to date. I hope that was a miscommunication in the way that it was told to us. So that's Mobile in a nutshell over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and since I should say the last month since I've talked to you guys. And that's the new stuff that's really being considered.
Talk to us a little bit about the racial polarization. What exactly is that?
Well, what the racial polarization study does is it takes a study of the demographics of ethnic groups by census tracts based on the last election or based on a last current event that was a major happening. And it studies the population to determine whether or not there's a true need, or whether or not there's also a disparity that is being presented or caused in a community by either, let's say, voter suppression or voter intervention. Or, for example, what I've used in the last few weeks is that, we moved a lot of people from RV, Orange Grove, AF Owens, Josephine Allen, and a lot of those people moved out west in District 7. But in the last election process, what people didn't realize is that some of these people never got their identification changed or logged in a new address. And that's another issue, because a lot of that goes to affordable housing. But when you don't have a new address and you go to the place in your District 7 or new district where you're told to vote, you go there, but your ID says you live in another area of the city, and they say you can't vote. They tell you have to go downtown to the Sullivan Center. If you used to live in Orange Grove or AF Owens, you go to the Sullivan Center to vote. They look at your ID on the machine, and then they tell you that, guess what? That address doesn't exist anymore. Now you can't vote here. So where do you vote?
Okay.
See, and that's just, in my mind, another way of voter suppression. And it normally is, 9 times out of 10 right now, it's happening to people in the minority community, or should I say, in the Black community, and from parts of the community that have been historically underutilized or deprived, or a socially economically disadvantaged group. So, that's a big deal. And it also goes to the fact that there's no affordable housing. So a lot of times you have people that are either using vouchers or people that are looking for a place to live, but they may lease or rent, and they may be in one apartment for a year, and then a year later they're moving again, so they're in another part of the city. A year from that, they're moving again, and they're in another part of the city. So come election time, they don't know where they're supposed to vote. So it would be nice if they had an anchoring place to vote. And the disparity part of the racial polarization study will identify that. And that will help us and also help the city. It'll give us an idea of what's happening. What group of people in the city are facing those types of polarizing situations.
Okay, great. Now, what about this? Will any of this impact us? The fact that the census report was actually underrated when it came to minorities and blacks and other minorities.
When you say underrated, do you mean that the disparity or difference between blacks to whites was underrated?
No, the number reported for blacks and other minorities was undercounted. And then the numbers for Asians and whites were overcounted.
Well, if that's the case,
that was on the national level. It was on the national news. So I'm quite sure some of it happened with us as well.
Well, if that's the case, then now more than ever, the need for a 4th Black district in the city of Mobile, or 4th majority minority district, is needed more than ever. Because I've stated on the show before that the census count from this past election shows, or from this past census, shows that Mobile has 23,000 more minorities or blacks in the cities than the majority whites. So the size of a council district is roughly 27,000 people. So we have a disparity of the size of one council district where we are actually the majority in the city. So therefore, it's, based on, elections and representation, I think that the representation should match the population. So it's time. It's time that we truly have a representation that truly matches the population of the city. So that's how I think it would affect us. And yes, it should.
Do we have any idea if a decision happens next week? Do you have any idea about when any of this will go into play? Or do we have to wait for the next election cycle?
Okay, if there's a decision made and, we accept whatever maps we're going to accept, those maps do not go in effect until the next election cycle, which would be 2025.
Okay.
At that time, then we'll have District 7 or District 2, or whichever district becomes the fourth, will have an opportunity to elect a person of their choosing, but also have the possibility of maybe electing a person of their choosing that may be a minority. And, it's not guaranteed that you'll get a minority, but we have that opportunity based on the voting age population. And I think we've never been able to do that before in the city of Mobile. We're getting to the point where we're just about there. We're there now, both based on voting age population. Right now, 51% of the voting age population in District 7 is minority, or minority majority, which is a black district when it comes to voting population. So which that number is, even though it's a good number that gives us an opportunity, it's whether or not that number is a sustainable number to maintain the district in the way that needs to be maintained. If you read several politically funding sources that talk about truly being able to flip an area, a district, they look for numbers in the 60s, 60%, 61%. And that's great. You look at districts 1, 2, and 3, you'll notice that those districts are districts of 60% or better. So, I read some email today, I think it was written by Joe Womack, that said that he felt like District 2 would be a flipped district by 2030. But no matter how you look at it, it would take the influx of population into the district, because you won't be able to do it by lines. And each time the census comes back and changes, the lines will change to accommodate the population of the city. So no matter what, we're always going to have, I would say, a minimum of 3 minority districts are black. So, but the thing now is that we have an opportunity to have 4. And based on the census, censuses are taken every 10 years. So for the next 10 years, the next decade, we should be looking at our leadership structure matching the population of the 2020 census, which is a minority city or a black city.
Okay. Let me ask you one other thing before we close out. The area that the city may be looking into annexing, would that drastically change the numbers in any district?
Yes. That would change the numbers in any district. Any annexation will change the numbers. We hear some council members talking about reapportionment and spreading people out once again, but you got to remember, when we went through an annexation under the Jones administration, I think that's what cost the District 6 to be lopsided for 4 years, because of the reapportionment doesn't happen until after the census count, or after the census was taken is when it was done. So now that we've gone through a census process, it was done. Now, the way the law states are, if I remember it correctly, states that no matter what the increase in population, based on the census count, we should have 4 minority minority majority districts or black districts for the next 10 years. So
Yes.
this is important to the black community, extremely important, especially to both the liberal community as well as the black community when it comes to structure inside the city as far as representation goes.
And there's no designated district that if we do the annexation, those people would go in. That hasn't even been determined.
No, ma'am, not yet. And I've got to go back and actually look at some of the rulings on apportioning and annexation, to see if they're spread around or if they're actually gathered in the areas in which the annexation takes place. I don't remember what we actually did under the Jones administration when it came to reshaping the districts after annexation at that time.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we do appreciate you keeping us informed, and we do appreciate you coming back to us at least once a month to just kind of keep us abreast. One of the things I have to say, and I know and talk to a lot of people in the city of Mobile, and everyone is very much aware of the redistricting issues. Very much aware of that. So you guys have done a fantastic job in getting the word out to the people. And I mean, it does not make any difference what station in life they come from. They all can tell you intelligently their opinions or their statements about the redistricting. So it has actually caused a lot of excitement in the city of Mobile, especially with the minority, in the minority communities. They know what's going on and they're staying on top of it.
Yes, ma'am, and that's great to hear. But let's remember that also we still have 12 to 18,000 unregistered voters in the
Yes,
city of Mobile that are of minority heritage, descent, or true minorities. So we need those people registered to vote. We also have a huge base of minorities and liberals and everyone else that have lost their voting privileges that we can help you reclaim your voting rights. Please come see us. Go visit Stand Up Mobile and a few others so that we can help you get your voting rights back. Also, voter education and reclamation, the AME Zion Church. That is the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church has a huge program that is teamed up with us that is doing voter education, registration, and reclamation so that we can get you really excited about voting. The one thing that we have to do, and that is once we get all of this straight with redistricting, we have to vote. We
yes,
have
yes,
to. It's important
it
because if we
is.
don't go vote, then we're doing the one thing that everyone expects us to. Even though we
Exactly.
have an opportunity to change the city, change our
Yes,
districts, we're not going to go vote. So
yes,
let's make sure we get our people and everyone in this city excited about voting once again. Let's have the lines at the doors on election day as
yes,
far as they can see.
exactly.
So
That's true.
that's our goal.
Do you have anyone in particular? Because we can get them on the show so they can come and talk. And I know we've got the one of the stand up Mobile founders. We get her. But what about with the AMEZ Zion Church? Anyone in
All right.
particular we could contact?
Yeah, let's get for the AME Zion Church. I want you to get two people on the show if you can.
Yes.
That is Sanford Davis,
Oh, yes.
uh, Reverend Titus Thorne from Big Zion AME Zion Church, and uh,
Oh,
and what and one AME guy, and that's Woolridge from Bethel. You get
oh,
those
okay.
three on the show to talk about voter registration, voter education, and voter reclamation, and then we'll have something. And
Okay.
let's get people excited. The AME Zion Church has a Project 100 program that's going not just here in Mobile, but all over the state of Alabama. And
Right.
going through this redistricting process, I've had a whole bunch of help from the AME Zion Church and actually getting people to the meetings, getting information out to the community, and helping us come up with a broad and comprehensive base so that we can make sure that everyone was being tapped. And that's partnering with people like Beverly Coupland, Stand Up Mobile, and also the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance and everyone else.
Yes.
So they've been a huge help. So let's also help get them a platform to where we can get more people registered to vote. So that
Yes.
by the time 2025 comes, and but not even 2025, we're in an election cycle now. If everyone doesn't know, we have our state elections to go through right now.
Yes,
And,
we
and
do.
we have some people on the ballot that we need to get out and vote for. So
Uh-huh.
and we haven't really thought about it, but Senate District 33 has been changed some, and Baldwin County has been drug into that district. So we need to get out, and we need to make our voices heard. Our vote is one of the most powerful things that we have in this country, and we need to make sure that we use it.
Okay, great. All right, well, you've given us some leads. We've got some people we can work on. And I promise you, we will get those folks in so we can get that message out. And we will continue to do this every month. Sometimes we can't hear it one time. Sometimes we need to hear it over and over and over again. So we will do that. That will be one of our goals.
Yes, ma'am. You
Okay.
guys have a great afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And if I can be any help to you, please let me know. And it's always a pleasure to be your public servant in District 2.
And we do appreciate, and we appreciate you coming and helping us and keeping us abreast of what's going on. Okay? Thank you again, Councilman Carroll. Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to close out our show. We had two fantastic guests today. Mr. Eric Finley, who's telling us all about the importance of the Black Mardi Gras history, which is just as rich, just as valuable as any of the other Mardi Gras. And sometimes we don't hear that. We don't see that. So sometimes we have to just go seeking to find out about our own. And of course, Councilman Carroll, who keeps us abreast of what's going on with the city of Mobile. All of us cannot necessarily attend city council meetings every Monday or Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. Some of us cannot attend because of work reasons or whatever, but Councilman Carroll will come and share the information. And before we close out, he's given us a list of people that we can contact. Their churches have programs for voter registration and voter education. So that's going to also be one of our focus, is to get that, because we have got people, and you know what I'm talking about. We've got people in office who automatically assumes that they're going back in because they have gone back in year after year after year. Or they stick a little animal on their sign. I'm not calling any names. They stick a little animal on their sign, and that is supposed to be some secret signal to other folks where they stand. So we do have to get out and get our voters, get our young people registered, get them voting, get the older people, get the people who have those addresses all mixed up right now. And then too, and a lot of people don't know this, but felons can actually vote. There are certain ones, depending on the crime that was committed, that denies you the right. But the vast majority of them can vote. It's a little process, but we've got time now to work on it. I'm going to get off my soapbox, and we're going to close out, because you will definitely hear some more from us about the voting issue, voter registration, and voter education. We can get them registered, but we also got to educate them in terms of why it's important and why we need your vote. Thank you again for spending this time with us, and we will see you next Sunday, same place, same channel, same time. Good evening.